Hey everyone, it's Leon up. Welcome back to DIY Beauty on Purpose. Today I am bringing you a kind of a collage of my favorite DIYs from June. And I'm starting with this beautiful dresser I redid. It was given to me by a friend who did not want it, wanted to get rid of it. And she said, "Do you want it?" I said, "I'll take it." It was in pretty good shape, but it did have a lot of scratches and like writings on it. So I did have to fill those in with some wood filler, which is what you see me doing right now. And once it was dry, I removed the handles while it was drying. And then I also sanded it down to make sure it was nice and smooth. And then I dusted and cleaned everything to ensure that it was dust-free, dirt and grime-free. So I redid this dresser using Jolie paint. If you don't know what Jolie paint is, I'll have it linked down below. It is a chalk paint and it's wonderful texture, beautiful coverage. And that's what I'm doing here. I gave this dresser 2 coats. And I should have primed before I painted it. Not that you need primer when you're painting with chalk paint, but I did get some bleed through that I think would have been avoided if I would have used primer, because usually the primer that I use is a stain blocking primer. But nonetheless, it was still a beautiful finish and I really loved the way it turned out. So this is me giving it its first coat. And then after that, I gave it another coat and then another coat. And I'll tell you that here in a minute. And don't forget to visit my very new blog, DIYbeautyonpurpose.com. I post every month different subjects, different lists of my favorite things and things like that. I'd love for you to connect with me there as well, and it is linked down below. The color that I am using is Gesso White, which is a very vintage antique white. It's beautiful color. It reminds me of melted vanilla ice cream, which makes me hungry right now. Like I said earlier, I added 2 coats and then I had to add a third one because, like I said, I did get some bleed through and I had to add some shellac to, as you can see, those darker spots is where I actually had to brush on some shellac to seal in those stains, and then gave it a third coat. But once those 3 coats were fully dry, I then went on to distressing, and I distressed it using my electric sander and a 120 grit sandpaper. I then dusted it very, very well and started to seal it using polyurethane in the crystal clear. And I am using a sponge applicator because it makes life so much easier. And a lot of these products, guys, I do have them in my Amazon store. And my Amazon store link, it is in the description box below as well. And then after I was done sealing, I replaced the handles, which I didn't do much to them except just clean them, make sure they were nice and clean. And then to finalize things, I did decide to line the drawers using contact paper from the Dollar Tree because one of the drawers had a very dark stain, and so I just wanted to cover that up. And there's the before. And there's how she turned out. Beautiful, beautiful dresser. It sold very quickly and the new buyer really loved it, and I'm just so happy with the way it turned out. It just has a beautiful vintage look. I mean, this dresser really had all those stickers and scratches on it, and it just now has new life, and it's just perfect, and it went to a wonderful, wonderful home. I also want to remind you that all of these videos that I'm showing you, these are my favorite DIYs for June, but the full videos of this DIYs are all going to be listed down below. There's going to be 6 videos listed with the full tutorial, full explanation on each one. All right, guys, so for my second favorite, one of the favorite DIYs from June was this Farmhouse Sign. I used scrap wood from stuff that I already had in the garage. this piece of paneling I used for a different project, and I had this piece left over, and it was literally this size. I didn't even have to cut it down to this size. I measured the sides because I want to cut the corners to make it look like a tag, and so I'm just using my yardstick here to measure, make a couple lines, and then I used my miter saw to make the cuts. Once I had the cut, I wanted to give it that little hole on the top to, again, give it that tag look. So I used a spade bit. I just found out that that's what that's called. Thank you guys for letting me know in the comments. And I just kind of eyed out the center of the top there. And then I just drilled just until the little pointy part went through. And then I had that nice round circular kind of shape to give it that tag look. Then I make sure it was nice and dusted or dust free, and I gave it 2 coats of Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white. Once the 2 coats were dry, I then sanded down the edges using my electric sander and a 220 grit sandpaper, and basically just focusing on the edges, very little in the center, just to give it a more farmhouse look. This sign, Farmhouse Sign, was part of 3 farmhouse signs that I DIY'd on the video. And again, that video will be linked down below. I made 3 beautiful farmhouse signs, and this was one of them. It was really hard to pick which one was my favorite, but I think this one topped it off. Alright, so then I used my Cricut and I cut some words saying bless our house, or no house, bless our home. And I am going to transfer it onto the bottom of this sign using transfer paper. And again, guys, if you're interested in these supplies, I have them in my Amazon store. And the link is down below. For the bless our home, I cut it too small. You can see that the S was cut a little short. I left it like that, and then I just basically, because I didn't want to waste the vinyl, but once it was on there, I finished the S using permanent marker, and honestly, guys, you can't even tell. And there I am using the permanent marker just to finish off that S and make it look like a full S. And then once I did that, I wanted to create like a little swag for the top. So I'm using florals from the Dollar Tree. These florals I got early spring, and I've had them and I've used them for several projects already. And I had these left over, so I'm just going to bunch them up there in the middle, creating like a little swag for it. And then I'm going to use some jute twine to secure it in the middle, and I'm just going to roll it around to make sure that it's nice and secure. I took a piece of rope. This is kind of like the rope you can find at the Dollar Tree, and I just separated one of the strands from it, and I'm gonna cut, it was probably about 1.5 feet long, and that's what I'm gonna thread through the little hole there, so that I have just, you know, the strand to hang it from, and to really make it look like a tag. And I'm just gonna knot it in the middle and call it a day. And then I'm going to secure the swag with some hot glue right underneath the hole there. And then I thought it just needed a little something else, so I'm going to use the remaining strand from that the half strand that I had from the strand from the top. I created just this tiny little bow there just to add, and I just thought it really finished it off. And that is it for this one. And there you have it. So beautiful. I ended up selling this one and it sold right away, and I'm just so happy with the way it turned out. Again, it was one of 3 farmhouse signs, and it was really hard choosing, but I think this one was my favorite. And if you want to see the rest, and if you haven't seen it, again, it'll be linked down below. Alright guys, so for my third DIY that I absolutely loved this month was this wall decor that my cousin gave me. She wanted to get rid of it, and I said, of course, I'll take it. And I quickly knew I wanted to create something super cute and super chic and feminine with it. I removed the arrow from it, and I kept it for any future DIYs that I make. Then I used some spackling to fill in those tiny little holes that the arrow was secured in. And I'm also going to use this spackling to create a raised stencil. If you've never done this, it's a really cool way to add texture and add a very cute detail to any DIY you're making. This frame was very beautiful as is, but I just felt like it needed a little something. So I'm going to use this flower stencil, and I'm going to, instead of paint, I'm just going to spackle it in or fill it in using spackling. And once you lift it, then you have a stencil, but it's lifted. Now it doesn't have like a huge lift, but when you see it, especially in person, it just looks so cute, guys. Seriously, you need to try this at home. So I just did this in the 4 corners. I didn't want to overwhelm it or do too much of it. I wanted to keep it simple and chic. So I did that in the 4 corners, and then I did let it dry overnight. And then once it's dry, I painted everything white using the Rust-Oleum chalk paint and the linen white. And I'm also using my chippy brush. And again, I'm just going to give it 2 coats and let it dry. So once the paint was fully dry, I am now going to be stenciling a French script stencil on the center part. And basically what I'm doing is I'm using a sponge brush with very little paint on it. If you can see, I'm dabbing the brush on the towel before I'm stenciling, and that's to remove excess amount of paint. I want this to be very light. It's going to be heavier on some areas, and it's going to be very light on others. And even when you think you're not adding any color, you really are. I think the key to this, because it's just such a small stencil, like the letters and the words, that it's easy to get a lot of bleed through. So just make sure you have very, very small amount of paint, and be sporadic. You know, add a little bit more dabs on one end, maybe a little bit less on the other. My goal for this particular, and actually my goal when I use this stencil overall, because I have used it on furniture before, is to really make it look like it's a vintage script that has been like fading away through the years. And that is exactly what I got with this one, and I really loved it. Once that was dry, I then used my electric sander and sanded just very little the edges, and I'm just focusing on the edges of the frame. I'm trying my very hardest not to even sand on top of the spackling of the raised stencil, because I don't want that to be removed. Just adding a little distress just to add a little dimension and a vintage look to it. I dusted everything, making sure it was dust free. And then I decided to add florals to the middle of the frame. And what I did was, before I drilled the holes, I placed the flowers in the middle just to kind of dry fit and eye out where I wanted them to be. I marked where I wanted the holes, and then I drilled the holes. I then took some flexible wire and I threaded through the little holes, leaving enough in the front so that I can put in the florals through. And once I knew where I wanted them, I then secured it with the wire, just basically pulled from the back, and then making sure that it was tight enough where the florals will not be moving around. And I did make sure that the back was also very flush to the frame because I didn't want the wire to scratch my wall. And this is a look at how I wrapped those stems on those florals. I basically didn't want that faux green stem to be seen. So I just took some raffia strands and wrapped it around, secured it on each end with hot glue, and that's it. I just thought it just gave it such a cute little detail, and it also thickened the stems, and I thought that was really cute. Alright, so then I took some jute twine and I made a simple bow with several strands. I wanted this bow to be a little bit thicker, I guess, with a little bit more dimension. So I created the bow, and that is it. I secured it right underneath the florals using hot glue, and that was it for that one. And again, the full tutorial will be linked down below if you're interested in watching it. I did create another floral design or floral DIY with this one. And look how beautiful, guys. I mean, such a feminine, vintage look, and it just has a timeless look to it. I really loved it. Alright guys, so for my fourth DIY that I made this month in June were these blocks. I made these blocks, I painted them and I cut them and painted them for Christmas, but I didn't have any more use of them after Christmas. I didn't know what to do with them, and I thought it'd be really cute to create some firecrackers for 4th of July. So the taller one, I put on some tape or painter's tape so that I can paint some red stripes. And I'm using Rust-Oleum Farmhouse Red, which is a very bright and vibrant tone of red. And I gave it one coat, and it was a very rough coat. What I mean by that is just not full coverage, and I didn't mind because I was going to distress it quite heavily. Same with the blue one. The medium-sized block I painted with the Coastal Blue by Rust-Oleum chalk paint, and I gave it a very rough one coat. Once that was dry, I removed the painter's tape, and then I started sanding it with a 120 grit sandpaper, and again giving it a pretty heavy distress. The theme that I wanted for this 4th of July was a very farmhouse, vintage, old American kind of look, and that's why I'm distressing everything. On the smaller block, I didn't do anything. I just kept it white with the distress that it already had on it. And as you can see, I did the very same thing with the blue one. So I'm going to be adding some rope to the top to act like the firecracker string. So one way you can find the middle on a square is that you can make a line from corner to corner, and then where the lines meet, that would be your center. But for this one, I decided to just eye out where I wanted the hole to be. And once I marked it on all three, I used a large, or the largest drill bit that I own, to make a hole. And I actually had to drill it and then drill it again, kind of swerving around the drill bit because it wasn't large enough to fit the rope. So I had to, like you can see there, I had to like just whiten it a little bit. And I did that to all three. And then this is rope from the Dollar Tree, that nautical rope that you can get at the Dollar Tree. And once I knew kind of like that it was going to fit, then I finished drilling the holes on the other two. And I am going to be adding jute twine to the center of each block. I just thought it needed a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more to it. And so I added some jute twine, rolled it around a few times, and made a very simple knot in the front and cut the excess. I did that on all three. On the original video, I DIY'd another sign that originally had these stars on them, and I removed them, and I thought it'd be super cute to reuse them and use them or glue them to the blue block here, symbolizing these stars and the flag, the American flag. Then when I was done with that, I am now just kind of eyeing out how long I want the string to be, and I cut 3 of them, and I'm just going to secure them, pouring some glue in each little hole, and then putting in the rope, and that's it. And there you are. There's how beautiful. I mean, they're just vintage looking, and I just love the fact that I kept these blocks and I was able to reuse them for 4th of July. Guys, I want to take a quick minute here and tell you about my brand new channel, Beauty on Purpose at Home, where I focus my videos on cleaning, decorating, organizing, landscaping, inspiration, anything that has to do with the home. I would love to connect with you there as well. So I have the link to that channel in my description box. Take a look at it when you're done. All right, guys, so for my 5th DIY, this was a trash to treasure that I recently posted, where I took recyclable items and turned them into beautiful farmhouse decor. This was probably my favorite of all of them, and it was probably the one that I got the most comments on. So I'm so excited to have included it in this video. So I took, this is a medium-sized can, and I removed the bottom of the can using the can opener. And then I'm just going to fold the bottom, or one of the sides, fold them very, very flat. And you can see there that I had to get the assistance of my hammer. The top, I just kind of folded just a little bit, giving it an oval look. And then I ended up having to take it outside and just really hammer down that bottom part so it's as flat as it can be. And that's, I also hammered the edges, the back edge as well, so that I can put in my hole puncher and be able to hole punch a couple holes so that I can create a basket. So I can put a chain on there so I can create a basket. I also have that hole puncher, guys, in my Amazon store. It is awesome. All right, so I then gave it one heavy coat of Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white. And I painted the back side of it, the inside, oh my gosh, the back inside of it, because you might be able to see that one. Once it was fully dry, I am going to hand write a word, which is going to be grow, using a permanent marker. And then I used a thicker permanent marker to create a more distressed look. So I'm just going to distress the edges, the bottom, and here and there making a few distressed lines to give it a more farmhouse look. As I mentioned in my original video, there's a few things that I would do different. The first thing that I would do is the holes that I hole punch on the back, I would have done it on the sides, because this one actually did kind of try to tilt forward when I added the floral. So if you are going to recreate this, I highly suggest you make the holes on the sides and not the back. This is a hanging basket chain from the Dollar Tree. I just going to reuse it here on this one. I took the clip from one of the other chains so that I can have 2 clips, one on each end, and that's what I'm going to use to hang the can, or now the basket, from. I did end up having to shorten that chain as well. I removed some links off camera to make sure that it didn't tilt, because it was actually tilting quite a bit. These succulents are from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to grab a few here and put them in there. And I did end up having to put floral foam Alright guys, so for my final DIY, I just recently posted this one, but I had to include it on my favorites from June because it was such a great find. I found this piece of wooden tray. I think it was a tray, I'm not sure, but I'm going to use it as a tray. Very solid at the Goodwill, and I'm going to repurpose it and making it into a convertible side table that I so desperately need for the couch, for the side of the couch. I'm going to build a base for it so that it can be a table. So I'm going to use 1x2s and 1x4s that I already had at home. I took some measurements, and I'm going to create kind of like a base for it. So it's going to be where the tray is going to rest. I'm going to secure everything using wood glue and brad nails. And that way it's pretty simple, but it's nice and secure. The wood glue will secure this and make it very, very sturdy. And again, for the full tutorial for this one and all of the other DIYs you just saw, the full videos are going to be linked down below. Please don't forget, I go into a lot more detail in the full videos. So if you have not seen them, take a look down below. So then I wanted to create legs for it, of course. I needed it to be, the table needed to be about 20 inches high. So I cut the legs 19 inches long because I wanted, the tray itself was about 1 inch thick. These are 1x4s that I had at home. I cut them, 4 of them, into 19 inches. And again, I'm going to secure them using wood glue and brad nails. Alright, so then after the 4 legs were attached, I decided that it needed a little bit more sturdiness. So I cut this 1x4 into 4 inches long on one side and 4.5 inches on the other side. And I'm just going to add them. I'm going to, again, use wood glue and brad nails. And this will create a more sturdy legs so that it doesn't move around on me. And then once everything was secure, it was time to paint. I wanted the bottom of this table to be solid white, And I am using Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white, and I give it 2 coats. So for the top, I'm actually going to leave it just about the same. I'm not going to do anything to it. I am sanding it down. Well, I am going to do a couple things, but I'm not going to paint the whole thing. I'm sanding it down just a little bit to remove any roughness, although it didn't have much at all. And then once I dusted it, I decided to add a stencil. This stencil says it's so good to be home. So I have used it in several projects, and I thought it'd be super cute for this one. I'm going to use the Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white and just stencil it in. I'm going to do a very rough stencil, so it's not going to be full coverage at all, because I want it to look very farmhouse distressed. And that's it. Once I did that, I let it dry. And then once it was dry, it was time to add some handles. This table is going to be a convertible table, and that's what I'm calling it. It'll turn from a table to a serving tray. So I wanted to have handles. I'm going to use some pipe brackets, and I'm going to use, what else did I use? Oh, Dollar Tree rope. I pre-drilled some holes there, and that way the screws can go in nice and tight and smooth. And so what I did with the rope, when it was kind of on the thinner side for the bracket was kind of wide for it. So what I did was I ended up having to knot it twice, but instead of knotting it a knot next to each other, I just made sure that the knot was on top of each other. That way it created a nice thick knot, and it would not pull through the hole of the bracket, if that makes sense. So that's what I did on both sides. And then once I was done with both sides, I decided to distress even more the stencil. I just thought it was just a little too bright for the look of the top of the table. So I distressed it using my electric sander and the 220 grit sandpaper, dusted it, and it was time to put it together. Oh, actually I did add felt pads on the bottom so that it's smooth on my floors. So I cut these in half and then I put them there. And that's it. Look how cute. This table, it's on my side of the couch and I love it. I use it every day, and I put my cups and remote controls and my phone, and I love it. So guys, this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is a component, if that's a word, of all my favorite videos of June, but there were so many. It was such a great month. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to watch full tutorials on any of these, again, the link is down below. My Amazon store is down below, as well as my new channel, Beauty on Purpose at Home. If you haven't subscribed, I ask that you consider doing so, and I hope you have